So surely the case for action is absolutely overwhelming. So what about the how? And I'd say I'm just going to focus on a few aspects of the how because there's so many aspects of the how. But the first thing we should underline very clearly is the importance of the sharing of cost. Policy has to be designed by the countries where the trees stand. They understand their own circumstances, their own challenges of development, their own institutional governance, cultural, historical structures that will influence the way in which any kind of battle against deforestation has to take place in their country. They have to design the policies. But this is surely a case where the costs that will incur, and there will be costs, that those costs should be shared globally. Because we all gain from the slowing or the reducing of the risks from deforestation. We're all responsible for the problem of the very weak starting place. We do have a responsibility as a world to partake in the sharing of those costs. We're also responsible as a world for the demand for the wood, which is part of the story. So whichever perspective you look at it, if you look at it in terms of history of where we are, if you look at it in terms of the future benefits which will accrue to all of us, if you look at it in terms of current demand for wood, and so on, there's a very powerful argument for us all sharing in those costs. But let us be very clear, and we constantly have to underline this, the strategies and policies themselves are the prerogative of the countries where the trees stand. The second part of the how that I wanted to emphasize was that this has to be seen as a part of economic development. You can't put the battle against deforestation over here and the challenge of development planning over here. When Brazil puts together its Amazon plan, this is about stopping deforestation and fighting poverty in the Amazon area of Brazil and indeed other contiguous parts of Brazil. It has to be a story of attacking deforestation and promoting development at the same time. The last time I looked at the numbers, there was 1 head of cattle per hectare in Brazil. 1 per hectare. They must be spectacularly lonely cattle. This is surely an example where better use of agricultural land, a more intensive use of land, not an extensive use of land, is of crucial importance. Many of us have spent, I have too, time in Indonesia, and there's still parts of Indonesia where something approaching slash and burn agriculture takes place. Again, a very extensive, wasteful use of land and water and all the other things. So we have to think, and this is a major part of the story, but not the only part of the story about why the battle against deforestation has to be integrated with development. It's agricultural development, agricultural productivity. And that has to be a big part of the story of the battle against deforestation. Surely tells us very clearly there's no way we can think of policies on attacking deforestation unless we also are thinking about policies of development. They're intimately integrated. If we try to pull them apart, we'll create confusion and havoc and will be much less effective. You can go on, of course. Governance is a key part of the story. In some countries, as we know, you find different parts of government fighting each other as to who's going to make off with the trees. This is, in some places the police think it's their prerogative to make off with the trees. In other places, or even the same place, the army will think it's its prerogative to make off with the trees. We, in our charming way in the economics of development, talk about these as problems of governance. I know it doesn't quite conjure up the kind of thing we're thinking of here, but you cannot have good legal structures, good development plans, unless there's a way of the country itself enabling these plans, having the institutional structures and the behaviour that can make these plans happen. So that will be a crucial part of the development strategy itself of a country fighting deforestation, but also an area where others, if they're asked, can can help. So the first part of the how was the sharing of the cost. The second part of the how is the absolute priority for integration with a whole development strategy. Now, the last part of it, of course, is prices. Now, I put it at the end, not because I think it's minor. It's not minor. It's major. Obviously, at a very simple economic level, if people are not to cut down trees, it has to be more rewarding to them to leave the trees standing as opposed to cutting them down. This is fundamental. But I put it at the end of the story because of the logical structure of the whole thing. You can't build a prices and market story unless the rest of it is starting to make sense. Now, it would be madness to wait for a perfect market until everything else is perfect. That's not a route to making things happen. But you have to be thinking about the whole development story in order to be successful with any kind of market structure. Now, the development story is going to be imperfect, the market structure story is going to be imperfect, but both of them together can do something strong and powerful and really make a very big difference here. But that's why I left it to the end. But it is going to be important to have market structures that work. I think we have to think, because of the dependence on development, the story of public money being most important in the earlier days of this story, and then over time, private money and carbon finance start to kick in.